Did you know that not knowing how to ration your poultry feeds is very unfair on your birds? It can as well leave you frustrated too. But if you know the right quantity of feeds to give to your birds, it is a win-win because one, you'll have a healthy flock, sorry. Two, a healthy birds gives you quality meat and quality eggs, which of course will ensure you more profit. Okay, so let's discover what amount of feeds to give to which amount, like to which group of birds in your flock. Okay, this is going to help you to ration your feeds correctly so that you do not, starve your birds or you overfeed them, ending in losses. Okay, therefore, today we will dwell on the quantity of feeds. Okay, mostly we are going to dwell on the quantity of feeds. Feed formulation shall come even in our next video, but let's focus first on the quantity. Okay, and let's jump right in. So you will realize that birds are usually given different quantity of feeds based on majorly three factors. And these three factors are the age of the bird, the size or the weight of the bird, and the purpose for which we are rearing the bird. Okay, let me give you three examples. What a one-old local chick consumes is way smaller than what should be given to a 3 weeks old broiler. Okay. Secondly, a chick at 3 weeks old. Okay. Let's say like a local chick at 3 weeks old, it could weigh somewhere between 280 grams to 300 grams, and it will eat a smaller ratio compared to a cock of 3 kgs. Okay. And lastly is the purpose for rearing the birds. So birds that are reared for production, for meat production, they must pack muscles within the shortest time possible. So you will realize that a 3 weeks old broiler will consume much more compared to its 3 weeks, its counterpart, like its layer, which is also 3 weeks. So you really have to understand that dynamics. Okay. And let's look at it in depth. Now we're going to use my 11 chickens, my flock. I have a small flock of 11 birds, and that we're going to use it as reference. Okay. And I of the 11 birds, I have 5 chicks. Okay. But I'm giving all of them the same formula. Okay. Although in the beginning I gave the 5 chicks starter mash, for the first 14 days of their life, but I on the 15th day I integrated them to the rest of the flock formula. Okay, so my 5 chicks at 5 weeks, they were weighing on average around 290 grams, and since then I've been giving them around 40 grams of feeds each every day. The hens, whereas, and some of them are laying, by the way, they are weighing on average 2 kilograms, and I'm giving them 90 grams of feeds per hen per day. I only have one cock. I have not weighed the cock. It is a bit stubborn, but let's it is huge. So we are going to give it 3 kilograms. Huh? And this cock, I'm giving it 100 grams of feeds per day. Now we are going to do some simple calculations, okay, from the 11 birds. So the 5 chicks getting 40 grams each, it totals to 200 grams per day from the 5 chicks, right? And the 5 hens with their 90, sometimes 80. Okay, with their 90 grams of feeds each, it is totaling to 400 grams. And the cock with its 100 gram, it is 100 grams. So like it's bringing us to a grand total of 700 grams of feeds per day for the 11 birds. Now this To some of you who already know this game, looks like I'm underfeeding my birds, but I'm not. Why? Because they're on free range. Okay, so the feeds is that in fact the commercial feeds accounting for only 70% of what is required, and they are scavenging for the 30% for the entire day. Okay, so if your birds scavenge for more than 5 hours a day, then you might consider cutting commercial feeds by 30% so that your total drops to 70% feeds per day. If you have layer hens which are on layer mash, they will require a different size. They're going to need like 120 grams because they are fully housed and they are not foraging. But local hens which are on free range like mine, they can take slightly less ration like I've demonstrated because they forage. And again, chicks that are broilers, their intake jumps to 70, at least 70 grams, okay, at 1 month. But my small dual purpose and local chicks, my small local chicks, and if you have dual purpose, you can give them 40 to 45 grams. And by the way, my four hens, they have started laying 2 days ago. And they are all laying at the same time because they are all within the same timeline as we had planned. And this is really good because we are going to easily be able to manipulate them to hatch their chicks on the same day. Okay, so that was that. Now, it is usually very important to pay attention to to your flock's eating pattern. For example, if the 700 grams that I usually give my birds got done and the birds still fight for the feeds, then I'm going to have to increase the ratio because one, it is an indicator that the chicks are growing fast, so I will need to increase the ratio. But if the feed sits there ignored after 20 minutes, it means that either I'm giving them too much or the birds could be sick. Then it's time to do something about it. You should also note that, keep that in mind. Then feeds form also matter. Okay, the grounded size of feeds is very important. One, starter feeds can be grown to a tinier particles, but a grower feeds would be the size of broken rice. Yeah, and a finisher feed should be small pellets. Here's the reason: if it's too fine, the birds will not eat. If you grind it to a fine powder, to a flour, the birds will not eat. But if again it's too big, the chicks will not swallow. So you are going to need to know how to balance it. Another thing is that you do not want to buy feeds from sources that you do not know. Okay, that cheap maize might contain molds, which cause you a lot, could cause you loss in your venture. Okay, a friend of mine lost more than 300 of his 500 layer birds because of cheap feeds. He had struggled for close to 2 years to set his farm. And then one day he noticed a considerable drop in egg production. Okay, the birds started dilating blood. They lost appetite, and egg production later dropped by more than 50%. That's where the birds began dying. When he brought in a vet who inspected the premise and examined his feeds and did this thing, he later suspected that the maize brand he was using could have aflatoxins, which later turned out to be true. And most of his birds died, because of using cheap maize, which had aflatoxins, which could have been prevented. So if the maize or your maize brand smells musty, do not use it. And always buy maize from a reliable source. Next is let's talk about season. Okay, seasons and housing in your area also influences the feeding pattern. Okay, usually during colder or rainy weeks, you should add 10% more. This is because the birds they burn more energy trying to keep warm, okay, whenever it's cold. And then in dry and hot weeks, you can drop the feeds by 5% because they will eat less. But again, they do not forget that they tend to drink more whenever it's hot. Okay, and don't just dump everything all at once. Okay, split the feeds into halves. Ensure that there is no wastage. Okay, what I usually do with my small flock, I give like 60% in the morning around 8 a.m. and then the 40% in the evening before they go to rest. Now, giving a portion of feeds in the evening is actually beneficial, okay? Because the birds they tend to empty their crops at night. Okay. Then secondly, hence they also need energy to lay in the morning. Okay. And lastly, friends, let's talk about the cock or your cocks. That cock might be eating into your profits one day at a time. The cock does not lay eggs. All it does is eat. And if you are keeping the cock for breeding purposes, then feed it strictly on 100 grams per day maximum. And you want to separate its feeds from the rest of the flock. Why? Because it will not only bully other birds, but it tend to excuse me it tend to eat into the ratio of other birds, right? So if you're keeping it for breeding purpose, then you're going to have to select a few cocks and then you cull the rest of the cocks. Otherwise, if you keep all the cocks, it is counterproductive. In fact, the cock consumes close to 4,000 shillings. That is around more than $1 every month. Okay, that is your profit. So you want to take care of that. Anyway, friends, we have come to the end of the video, and thank you for sticking to the end. See you in the next one. Thank you.